there, movie buffs and TV junkies. Welcome to the Drive and Chat podcast, the show where we roll out the red carpet for all things film and television. I'm Gabe Whiteman, and today we're diving into the film that kicked off the MCU, Iron Man. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, here we go, another Iron Man review. But trust me, I've got some fresh takes for you today, and I'm not just talking about Tony Stark's shiny new suit. Iron Man still holds up as one of the best origin stories in the MCU. And I'm going to break down exactly why. So stay tuned because later in the episode, we'll talk about some things that make this film stand out even after all these years. Also, stick around to find out why Iron Man's villain could have used a little more oomph. But we'll get into that later. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty of the review, let's talk about the recent Marvel news, or actually technically recent movie news. So first off, I just want to let everybody know that I did trailer reactions for all the recent trailers that came out recently, including What If Season 3, Thunderbolts, Captain America Brave New World, Minecraft, and How to Train Your Dragon. So make sure to check all those out. I will link all of them in the description below. Next, I saw that apparently Hawkeye Season 2 is happening. I've heard there's actually been like a lot of news about this recently, just because I've heard like bits and pieces like here and there, but I didn't know if it was actually happening. But apparently Hawkeye Season 2 is happening. So filming is reportedly starting in fall 2025, and it might release in like fall 2026 or sometime in 2027. So who knows? I don't know. I think this is a bad idea. I feel like it should have just been it should just be a one-off. I don't think there's really much to go about this. Because there's another piece of news that I will talk about next is one of the reasons why they shouldn't make a Hawkeye Season 2, but whatever. I've heard that apparently Hawkeye Season 2 will actually introduce, not Jeremy Renner, Clint Barton's brother, apparently, because apparently he has a brother. So there's rumors that he'll be introduced, but I don't know if that'll actually be the case. So who knows? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I personally think it was a solid show. Don't know if it should be actually introduced and developed into another season. But that's just me. But so far, to sum it up, filming in fall 2025, and it will release in fall 2026 or sometime in 2027. Next, and the last piece of news, is there's a Young Avengers project happening. So I have heard that the Young Avengers is happening. I've heard a lot of different things. I've heard first that it was actually going to be a movie, and then that didn't happen. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see like all the new generation of superheroes, because they've introduced so many. Man, I couldn't even name them all. I know there's Kate Bishop, there's Kamala Khan, there's the kid from Brave New World, Falcon Winter Soldier show that was like the nephew of Isaiah Bradshaw. So he might be related somehow. Then we also have Hulk's son, apparently, from She-Hulk show. That is Scar, I want to say. Or Sakaar or something like that. And then we might have Hulkling introduced soon. We also have Joe Locke that was just introduced from Agatha. So there's like a lot of like new runner-ups. Oh, Cassie Lang as like the Wasp or whatever her name is going to be from Quantumania. So yeah, there's like a lot of like new people that I would be interested to see, definitely. But it is going to happen. However, recently there has been reported that there are going to be some changes. So first off, it's not going to be called Young Avengers. Apparently it's going to be called Champions. And the reason is because apparently a lot of the superheroes and a lot of the new generation of the quote-unquote Young Avengers aren't young anymore. They're more like young adults. So, yeah. So I think it was probably the right call. However, I do feel like they should have been named Young Avengers. They should have just kept the title. I feel like that would draw in more money. But, hey, whatever. You do you. And instead of a movie, because it was always be planned as a movie, it was actually being turned into a show. So, honestly, me personally, I get it. The reasoning behind it was because they were going to do a movie, but they changed it because of money issues. So they knew they saw how the Marvels performed, and because the Marvels performed terribly, they were like, you know what? I don't think it's gonna do the same. It's probably gonna perform just like that. So they weren't gonna risk it. So they're turning it into a show, which I definitely get. I get 100%. I think it was the right move. However, it does suck that it's gonna be a show. I feel like it would be kind of interesting to see a movie. However, if we're gonna have like a Young Avengers movie, we need to have a Avengers threat. Like, not totally like high up on the threat, but threat-ish. So I don't know who they would have as a threat. That's a problem because there's no way it'll just be a team building show. There's no way. So to me, it would be nice if they brought back Jonathan Majors, considering that the lawsuit that his ex-girlfriend filed back in March 2024 is officially dropped. So that would be nice if they just brought him back for that, and then he gets taken down, and then Doctor Doom shows up. So that would be interesting, but probably won't happen. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. We'll see. There's no like information on when it'll be filmed or like published or released or anything. So we'll see. So it sounds like it's in the works. It will probably most likely come out before Secret Wars, but we'll see. So what do you think of Young Avengers and Hawkeye Season 2? Are these good movies by Marvel or good moves? Or are you disappointed? Let me know on our Twitter, linked in the description below. Also, make sure to check out my trailer reactions of the Minecraft movie, How to Train Your Dragon, Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and What If Season 3. They're all in the description below. Now, let's get into this review. Okay, so here is the plot of the movie. The film opens up with Tony Stark, which is played by Robert Downey Jr., a genius playboy, which is a classic move, who's kidnapped by a terrorist group called the Ten Rings while in Afghanistan. They force him to build a weapon of mass destruction, but instead, Tony uses his brain and the resources around him to create the first ever Iron Man suit. After escaping, Tony returns home and uses his new suit to take down the Ten Rings, while also grappling with his responsibilities as a tech mogul. Meanwhile, his trusted friend and business partner, Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, has his own plans. Directed by Jon Favreau, with Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts, and Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane, Iron Man is the start of what we now know as a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, so let's get into the review of Iron Man. So first off, let's talk about cinematography. So I think the visuals for Iron Man are actually pretty good. Right off the bat, the opening scene of Iron Man hits you just like a ton of bricks. The unexpected explosion in the beginning, that was a great way to grab the audience's attention, in my opinion. The rest of the film just follows up with a fast-paced, heart-pounding scenes that you just leave you breathless. Like, for instance, I think a lot of it, that gripped the audience was the scenes where Tony was working on the Iron Man suit. Whatever it was, I think it was Mark II, Mark III, something like that. I don't know. But those scenes are really good. Cinematography-wise, the scenery shots are good. I like how, it in the beginning where it showed Tony Stark, in bed with the reporter, or with a reporter, and then the next morning it showed the reporter getting out of bed after, their happy time, and it shows Tony Stark's mansion, which is actually pretty cool. His mansion is on the cliff of LA or something like that, and that scenery shot was actually pretty good. Another good scenery shot was the missile demonstration that Tony Stark was doing in the beginning before he got kidnapped and everything. That was pretty cool. I don't know. I think cinematography wise, has a lot of good scenes. The scene where with this Tony Stark's first flight was good, especially him going into space and everything, and trying to navigate, trying to get his suit back online and everything, since he was falling to his death. That was actually pretty cool, especially the fight scene. It had it mirrored that scene, and it was a callback to it. That was actually pretty cool. I don't know. I think overall, the cinematography was actually really good. Yeah, I don't know. I think the cinematography overall was good. I wouldn't say it was creative or anything, but it definitely has some cool shots. Whether it's Tony Stark's first flight or just the reveal of his shiny new suit, the VFX are top notch, and it's clear this movie was pushing boundaries for superhero movies at the time. And it really shows because the VFX for Iron Man's suit was actually really good. it like comparing it to the rest of the other shows and movies that Marvel has produced, yeah, no, it still looks good. This movie, like, put this in like retrospect, this movie came out in 2008, and I want to say, yeah, this movie came out in 2008. This movie, I want to say, is now, oh gosh, no, it's almost 20 years old. No. Yeah, I think it's 16 years old. Wow. This movie is 16 years old, and the VFX still look good. That's insane. That honestly just makes me feel old. Okay, let's get back to past the moment. I don't want to feel old. Um, anyways, but considering on when the movie was made, I think the VFX just look amazing. Like all the explosions, the first flight scene, Iron Man's suit, especially when like he's actually suiting up with like the with his like robot helpers, you want to call them. Actually putting on the suit himself, that looks good. The tank scene where he gets shot down by like a tank, but then he shoots down. Yeah, he gets shot down, but then he shoots back, and like the tank like explodes while he's walking off. That was good. Like the VFX actually look like really good. So I gotta give him a round of applause. Next, let's talk about tone. So one thing I love about Iron Man is the tone. The movie strikes this perfect balance between like lighthearted humor and intense action. Robert Downey Jr. like totally nails like Tony's like cocky, snarky side, especially in the scenes where he's just like messing around with his tech. But then he does like flip the switch like all of a sudden, and it's like it's time to get serious. Like it's a perfect mix that keeps things like fun but still grounded. And that tone like definitely shows through his character. Like I said, like Tony has like almost like two sides to his personality. He has like a cocky, snarky, like I'm rich, like I can do anything. And then he also has like a serious side where like, okay, yeah, no, we're down to work. Like the perfect example I can give you is the scene in the very beginning of the movie where he is like walking off from whatever he was doing. I think it was like playing like poker or blackjack or something like that, or just shooting dice. I don't know. Anyways, he was walking back to his car, and then a Vanity Fair reporter came back and was like, "Oh, hey, I really want to talk to you." And of course, he was like, "Okay, I'll talk," just because you're hot. And then he talks to the reporter. Reporter asks him questions, and he's like being like all snarky, and literally then the reporter is just like done with his like smart ass answers, and he's just like, all I want is just a serious answer. And then Tony Stark like just flips the switch, and he's like, okay, I'll give you serious. And then and totally just gives a total serious moment, and that really shows Tony Stark. It really does. He has his moments, but man, it's good, especially like over the Marvel story. If you watch Marvel throughout the years and like the actual like story itself, he definitely changes his personality. Like he becomes less and less of like a snarky person, which like I don't mind, but I also wouldn't mind seeing that personality again. So, that's just me. But it does like flip a switch. He does have like the movie does have like its funny moments, especially when Tony comes back from like his first flight scene, and he was like kill power, and then he just totally crashes through the roof and like crashes through his piano all the way down to like one of his precious like classic cars, and it's just like I think it was a Corvette too, if I remember right. Yeah, no, it was like it has its funny moments, but like at the same time it also has its serious moments, like especially when like he finds out about what's happening overseas, especially where he was actually held captive and everything. And then he has like that. Then there's that serious scene where he's messing with his gauntlet, or like his robotic hand, and like adjusting the power while watching the news of these people being forced out of their homes because it's getting blown up and everything because of him. So it has its serious moments, but it also has like the lighthearted ish place. I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a perfect balance. Next, let's move on to music and sound. So, I mean, I know I was just talking about tone, but speaking of tone, the soundtrack for Iron Man is just pure rock and roll gold. Like that, like I don't know who came up with the soundtrack. Definitely wasn't James Gunn. James Gunn still takes a crown on soundtracks, but Man, this soundtrack for Iron Man was insane. I loved it. Like kicking things off with like AC/DC's Back in Black. That was such, and that was like, that's like basically the theme song. That was the theme song for this movie. I mean, technically it isn't, because at the very end of the movie, like during the credits, they play a song, which is, I want to say it's actually called Iron Man, and which is by Black Sabbath, if I remember. And yeah, they that's the actual theme song for Iron Man. They actually wrote that specifically for Iron Man, and that song was pretty good. They also have some other songs. There's another song that I really liked. I can't say the name of it because it's because of what the title is, but it is a good song. It's the, if you want to look it up, it is the song that is playing when Tony Stark is working on his car after he slept with the reporter, like the morning after. It's that song that's playing. I want to say it's by a band called Institutionalized, but yeah, but the title of the actual track is, I can't actually say on here. So, so if you want to look it up, go for it. But it's a really good song. And so honestly, the whole soundtrack is just good, and it's just a perfect choice for Tony Stark's like larger than life persona. And it also has a wide range because like when Ghostface Killah, there was a Ghostface Killah song that plays during a scene when they were on a plane. It, yeah, like talk about like just like a surprising yet perfectly fitting choice. It just adds like that extra layer of like attitude, you know? Like I don't know, it just matches so well to the point where I think they like, I don't know, they did it very very well. And I don't know. Like even though it was all rock, I'm surprised Ghostface Killah actually made an appearance on this movie. Like not him himself, but his song on the movie. I'm surprised. But hey, it worked out. It worked out. It was definitely a party song, and it definitely matched Tony Stark's personality. Next, let's move on to acting. Now, let's get to the heart of the movie. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. There's no doubt that he was perfectly cast. Like his wit, charm, charisma, just like it makes Tony feel like a real person, not just a superhero. And you believe his growth throughout the movie, from like cocky playboy to self-aware hero. And even though Robert Downey Jr. is like the star of the movie, there's other actors and actresses that are awesome too in here. Like Gwyneth Paltrow is great as Pepper Potts, like bringing a grounded, like human element to the film. And let's not forget Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane, who plays the jealous, power-hungry business partner, just with the right like amount of subtle minutes. And honestly, that was out of everybody, that was the one actor that I couldn't. Honestly, I was actually surprised for being in a superhero movie. I could not see Obadiah Stane. I could not see Jeff Bridges in a superhero movie. I can't. But for a second, I will say I didn't even realize it was Jeff Bridges. I think it's just because of the hair. I have never seen Jeff Bridges bald. I've always seen him with hair, and it took me by surprise. Took me by a surprise for sure. But he did a really good job, and Gwyneth Paltrow did a good job. Robert Downey Jr. was a star of the show, and he just rocked it as Tony Stark / Iron Man. Like, he rocked it. He did a good job with the personality. And I also feel like a part of that Tony Stark personality was rubbed off on Robert Downey Jr.'s actual personality. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be the same situation as Johnny Depp. Because when Johnny Depp played Jack Sparrow, he basically made that his whole personality and his whole persona. And I feel like it's going to be the same thing with Robert Downey Jr. I feel like with him, he's definitely going to, I don't know, he definitely has like that Tony Stark element to him. Not cocky, but just, you know, being smart ass funny, you know. So, but overall, I thought the acting was like really good. I think they did a really good job. Next is direction. So, Jon Favreau's direction here is, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it was actually really good. Like, his direction here is key. He doesn't just make a superhero movie, he makes it feel like a story about a man who's trying to figure out what kind of person he wants to be. Like, the movie does an excellent job balancing action with character development, which is a feat a lot of superhero movies can struggle with. Like, that's, if when making a superhero movie, and I'm mainly talking about DC here, it's honestly really tough. It's harder than you think. And it's really hard when trying to balance like when you're trying to balance hero action and superhero-ness, and you also need to balance character development and stuff, it's really hard to do because you only have a certain amount of time to make this movie, and I'm sure 90% of the time, the head guy, which is Kevin Feige in this case, probably gave them a time limit. So they're like, oh, hey, this movie needs to be like 2 hours and nothing more. And I'm sure it's hard to do trying to balance everything. So honestly, for what Jon Favreau did, he did an amazing job. He did an amazing job with story. He did an amazing job balancing hero action and actual like development of the characters, and especially with the chemistry between Pepper Potts and Tony Stark. I thought they did a good job with that. You really like felt that tension and that chemistry, which is good. Which, I mean, you got to give some credit to Gwyneth Paltrow and Robert Downey Jr. They did a good job trying to like have that chemistry. So I thought it was good. And Jon Favreau did a good job directing this movie. It's funny how he played a part in his own movie, that he played like a you know a, a driver for Tony Stark, which is pretty funny. So I'm glad. That was actually another thing that I was actually kind of glad about, was that even though he's the director, I'm glad that he didn't give himself like a big job. Like, I'm glad he wasn't like Tony Stark himself. He was like a driver for Tony Stark, which is like, I don't know, not like a sidekick, but what I'm getting at. Like, he wasn't like the star of the show, which is actually pretty good. So he kind of let the stars shine, and it really showed. So I think Jon Favreau is a really good director. He did a good job directing the action. He did a good job trying to balance everything. I think overall, as far as direction goes, he did a good job. And now let's move on to the villains, which I have some thoughts about that. So this might take a second. So honestly, let's move stuff out of the way. Jeff Bridges is solid as Obadiah Stane, which his actual like villain name is Ironmonger. At least in the comics he is, but I don't think he was ever called Ironmonger in the movie. He was just known as Obadiah Stane, or Obadiah. So I mean, that was kind of a letdown, but at the same time, it's whatever. It's not like a big thing. I mean, they did the same thing with Iron Man 2, which I will review in the future. I don't know when. I don't know when the date will be for the movie when I review it, but it will be reviewed in the future. But anyways, they did that in Iron Man 2. The Ivan Vanko, I think is what his name is, the villain in Iron Man 2, but he was never actually titled as Whiplash. He was just titled as Ivan Vanko, which is pretty, I don't know, especially that he should have actually been called Whiplash, but whatever. Anyways, point of the story, Jeff Bridges was solid as Obadiah Stane / Ironmonger. He's like this calm, like calculating guy who's like hiding this like darker motives, and he makes a believable villain. He really does. That being said, I have a bit of an issue with the Ten Rings. They feel like more like a shadowy background presence than a real threat. Like, I don't know. Like, they did take up like maybe a quarter of the movie, like because they showed Iron Man being like kidnapped and everything, and they were like, oh hey, 36 hours earlier, and showed like the lead up to that, and they showed him actually in the cave and everything, and so like the Ten Rings as like a whole is like menacing and is a villain. They did like kidnap him, they did do all this stuff and everything, but like after he escaped from the cave and everything, then they kind of just like, I don't know, said, hey, let's pause this and focus on Obadiah Stane, and like, I don't know, basically had him build up his villain arc, which I don't know if I totally like, to be honest. Seriously, I don't know if I like that, just because technically Obadiah was the true villain of the movie, but it's kind of hard to try to balance two villains at the same time. It's really hard because, like, I don't know. I think that's like the main reason why I feel about the Ten Rings, just because like it felt like there was two villains, but the Ten Rings villain was like, I don't know, almost like took a seat on the bench in the sidelines, just because like after he escaped the cave, they like showed back to the Ten Rings a couple times, but only a couple, because like after that they were like they showed like a scene of them trying to build the Iron Man suit for some reason, and then they showed another scene where Obadiah Stane met the Ten Rings, and it's revealed that that Obadiah put the hit on Tony, and basically hired the Ten Rings, and blah blah blah. And so like they did all this, but at the end of the day, though, I don't know. It just felt like they weren't like menacing. Like even the leader of the quote unquote Ten Rings, he wasn't. He wanted like revenge because he like turned his half of his face into a pizza crust, but like I don't know. We never saw them again, and that's what I don't like. That's what I do not like. I feel like they could have fleshed out his story, with like revenge and everything, but they didn't. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's whatever. Obadiah's villain was good. Ten Rings was kind of a sideline, to be honest. They should have done him better, but it is what it is. But yeah, no. At the end of the day, the Ten Rings just feel more of like a shadowy background presence than a real threat. Like, yeah, they're dangerous, but we never really get to know them enough to feel like the tension they could have brought. So it felt like once like Obadiah was introduced, then they were like, you know what, we're gonna sit this one out, and then Obadiah just like basically took like front and center. So I don't like really like that, but it is what it is. The villains were still good as it is, though. For what it's worth, and for however long the movie was, which is I think 2 hours, they did good. And last but not least, let's move on to the action sequences. So honestly, this movie had a lot of good action sequences. I think that's like the star pupil of the actual movie is the action. Like the fighter jet scene, a classic. Like the first flight in Iron Man suit, iconic. I don't know, both of those were probably the best ones and probably the star of the show. Honestly, I think if I had to put them up to a vote, I'd probably say I like the fighter jet scene more. Because, I don't know, it just showed like his true energy and his true like capabilities of Iron Man with the suit. Because after that, he was able to like test it, and he actually knows like what to do. And the military got involved, and I do like the military presence in the movie. That's actually one aspect. I do like the military presence. So that was actually like really cool. But yeah, no, I think I'd probably like that one better. But even then, both of them are like really good. I think both of them are really good. Yeah, the first flight was good. I like how he was just kind of like going everywhere, and they were just kind of like doing whatever they can. And honestly, I think at the end of the day, I think that the action was actually like really good. I think the reason why I would put the fighter jet scene above the other one is just because of how they like executed it. I feel like I don't know. I feel like the fighter jet scene might have given me like vibes of like I don't know an 80s movie, not like how it was filmed, but like just the military presence of it, and how like they were trying to like eliminate him, but they also showed like the capabilities of the Iron Man suit. So it was actually pretty cool. But him going into space and like testing its limits in the first flight scene was actually really good too. So I don't know. I really like the action scenes. Like the way the suit just comes together in like the workshop is some of the best superhero movie tech porn you will ever see. And yes, I just said that. I was thinking about how to like really grab you guys, and I was like, you know what? Tech porn. That's it. The final act isn't bad. I gotta say, it's solid, but it maybe lacks the wow factor. Like, yeah, it was a good like final boss scene, but I don't know. I feel like it could have maybe had something else with it. Like, it's still a good fight. Don't get me wrong. It's still a good fight. But, like, somehow about it, just something about it just feels a little, like, underwhelming in comparison to the rest of the movie. Like, I feel like, I don't know. They were like, oh, hey, I have this big suit. And then they fought for, like, maybe 5 minutes. And then they're like, you know what? That's it. And that was it. It was like, really? Okay. Like, and the movie ends with, like, him saying, I am Iron Man. But, like, the final boss scene, I don't know. He didn't really feel powerful. He was honestly his arc was, you know, a typical like businessman, evil person. But like, I don't know. I just feel like the boss fight in the third act could have been a little bit better. But overall, the action was like really good. Overall, I think this movie was movie action, the action sequences, the villains, the direction, acting, music and sound, tone, like cinematography, like literally everything. I thought everything was ended up being really good. Overall, though, from a surprise explosion that opens up the movie to a soundtrack full of rock anthems that just make you want to fist pump, Iron Man knows how to grab your attention and keep it. Robert Downey Jr. delivers a performance that basically becomes the definition of Tony Stark. Iron Man is a damn good movie. The performances, the soundtrack, the humor. This film has all the right elements to make it stand out. Not just as a superhero film, but as a really well-made movie. Sure, the villain could have used a bit more depth, and yeah, the Ten Rings felt underdeveloped, but even with those small gripes, Iron Man remains a solid 9 out of 10 for me. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people would probably say this, but Iron Man still holds up till today. It came out a long time ago, and it's basically started the MCU, but at the end of the day, it's still a really good movie. It's still probably one of the better ones out of all of the MCU. And honestly, it's no wonder it launched the MCU to greatness, because like this movie proved that a superhero film could be just more than just action. It could be about a man's journey to redemption, and it could have heart, humor, and style in spades. But before we go, I want to hear your thoughts. If you could reboot Iron Man, what changes would you make? Would you beef up the villain? Let me know over on our Twitter and Instagram at drive-in-chat-pod. That is at drive-in-chat-pod. And if you want to find us on any other social media, I want to let you know that all of our social media has the same handle. So it is at drive-in-chat-pod. That is drivenchatpod. That is at drive-in-chat-pod. And if you enjoyed the show, make sure to leave a review, follow us for the latest updates, and join us next week for some cinematic fun. Until then, keep the popcorn poppin' and the reels rolling.